Another slide on of this muscle tissue within an organ. This slide you may recognize as the same slide that we looked at for simple columnar epithelium. But at that time we were looking along these little finger-like projections into the lumen of the intestine. This time, to identify the smooth muscle, we're going to look out here in the wall. Remember, smooth muscle is found in the wall of internal hollow organs, such as the intestine. Now, some of you may be asked to identify smooth muscle in the wall of the urinary bladder. That will be from the same slide that you looked at for stratified transitional epithelium. But this slide is a wall of the intestine. So we're going to zoom in on this outer wall here. We're really only going to see a sort of a streaky appearance to this. That's why we have the other slide, so that you can see individual fibers. Because when we look at this tissue and all of this from here, from about here, all the way through the screen, all of this is smooth muscle. But we cannot see the individual muscle fibers that we could see on the slide of the teased or dissociated fibers. You see the streakiness that you can see here. You can see the nucleus of these cells. Here's a nucleus. Here's a nucleus. Each nucleus represents one single fiber, because remember, these are uninucleated. So this streaky appearance through here is the smooth muscle tissue in place in an organ such as the small intestine. The last type of muscle tissue that we will look at is cardiac muscle tissue. Anatomically, cardiac muscle tissue is striated. It has the little cross markings or striations that we first saw on the skeletal muscle tissue. It is involuntary. Cardiac muscle tissue is not controlled by conscious effort. The muscle cells branch. Because the muscle cells branch, the term that we use to describe this shape or branching characteristic is bifurcated. These cells have only a single nucleus per cell, and therefore we term them uninucleated. Probably the most unique characteristic that we will see on cardiac muscle tissue, and one which you are for sure responsible for, is identifying these structures called intercalated discs. The intercalated discs will appear as darkly stained striations that are located between muscle fibers in cardiac muscle tissue, and they give strength and durability to the cardiac muscle tissue. Sort of forms a stronger bond between the muscle cells. Of course, the only place that we find cardiac muscle tissue is within the heart. We have cardiac muscle tissue on high power under the microscope. You can see the striations up and down, markings along through here, and right above the pointer here is an intercalated disc. This is that darkly stained striation, you might say. We have another intercalated disc about here. We have a nice intercalated disc right here. The nuclei of these cells are not quite as apparent. This is a nucleus in here. On your slides, you'll be able to see many more nuclei. And notice also the branching nature. You can see an area where it has branched here. Again, looking up at this cell, you can see some branching in here, this bifurcation of this tissue. We'll move the slide around a little bit. We can see a lot more of the nuclei. Here's one, a nucleus here, intercalated disc here, several intercalated discs here and up in here. And all throughout this you have these up and down markings, which are the striations. So this is cardiac muscle tissue. This is found only in the heart. The last type of tissue that we will look at is not a muscle tissue, but it is the fourth general type of tissue that is found in the human body. This tissue is nerve tissue or nervous tissue. This tissue is composed of two types of cells, the neurons and the neuroglial cells. Neurons are cells which are responsible for the actual conduction of nerve impulses. This cell is a typical neuron. A couple of parts that you are responsible for knowing: these fibers that extend out from the main part of the cell here, these fibers are the dendrites. Dendrites carry nerve impulses toward the main body of the cell. The other fiber is an axon. This axon carries impulses away from the main part of the cell body. The dendrites, again, carry impulses toward the cell body, axons away from. This central part of the nerve cell that contains most of the cytoplasm and contains the nucleus is called the cell body. The cell body is the main part of the nerve tissue that you will be able to see under the microscope. Neuroglial cells support, protect, and nourish the neurons. We will see these neuroglial cells as just dots surrounding the different neurons under the microscope. The functions of nerve tissue are to initiate and transmit messages in the form of nerve impulses. Tissue helps to control or regulate many of the body's functions. The primary locations of nerve tissue include the brain, the spinal cord, the nerves, and the various sense organs. On low power, we see the nerve tissue under the microscope with this whole dark blue area here as the cell body. The extensions outward are axons and dendrites, but you're not responsible for being able to identify which is which under the microscope. All of these little specks that you see out in here are the neuroglial cells. High power, we can see the cell body better. Again, all of this blue area is the cell body. And we can see inside the cell body, we can see this nucleus located right here. Again, all of the little specks, the little dots that we see out in here are neuroglial cells. Here we have a couple, 3 cell bodies. There's a good couple of cell bodies there with the nucleus right in the middle. So this is nerve tissue or nervous tissue. This completes a review of all of the types of muscle tissue, from epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve.